Episode 8 of the Property Podcast. We've made 8, Russell.
I can't believe it. I don't think we get past 2. Here we are.
Right. Now, are you going to be calmer in this episode?
I'm always calm. I mean, certain people, you know, you are Charlie Lambdin, push my buttons and I react. I know I do. But I think people expect a full and frank debate, don't you?
Well, maybe I'll get a little pause button. Maybe I'll get a little
or
pause
just a
button.
bucket or a bag to put over my head. I think this episode, though, might be a very different kettle of fish.
I think it's going to reveal a lot and help an awful lot of people. So, without any further ado, welcome Amy Shields to the Property Pulse podcast.
Thank you.
Can I just say, Amy did actually have, I don't know if it was the pleasure, the honour, or the dubious chore of sitting watching the last interview that we've just done with Charlie Lambdin. And at the end of it, she looked at us as if to say, I'm not sure I'm going to do this.
I'm a little bit scared.
Yeah. Was it? It wasn't that bad, was it? Anyway,
quite scary.
Let's not talk about that.
Let's talk about you.
Let's talk about you.
Yeah.
Who's Amy Shields?
That's a really good question.
Start from the beginning.
Not
necessarily
me.
the day you were born, but you know what I mean. Start from the beginning.
I think for our audience, they're going to want to know about you. But as we're related to property, people will know you now as the commercial director of Smart Compliance. But they won't know the backstory of you were an estate agent for 12 years?
16 years.
16 years.
At?
Where's the researcher? Come on, 16.
At.
16 years.
Research.
Sorry.
So 12 years at Romans in the Dale Norton days, and then Davis Tate, which were one of the LSLI brands for 4 years.
Okay.
Before I decided I needed a new challenge.
Did you do it straight out of school?
No. So I've got a degree, believe it or not, in film production.
Did you? That's why
Yeah.
you're so comfortable
So I can do all
here.
this.
Yeah. How are we doing?
Yeah.
It's good.
Chris is after your job. Be careful.
And I worked in, so I graduated, somehow landed, blagged a job for a production house in Soho. So I actually worked just off Soho Square, which was amazing because at that time I was just kind of finding my feet with my sexuality as well. So working in Soho was quite good fun.
Don't worry, we're not going to let that go. We will be coming back to that in a couple of minutes.
And then a year into that, I actually decided that, no offence to the chap here, but actually it wasn't my bag and film production wasn't floating my boat.
You hear Chris coughing in the background.
I did work for a company that we did TV and actually corporate videos. So we did a lot of work for people like British Airways, Citroen, the other big corporate companies.
So how did you go from that into agency? Presumably you did go straight from that into agency.
Yes.
So is it like most people,
Do you know, I remember
an accidental
really
thing?
Well, I was really confused. Obviously, I've just graduated. I was going through a bit of a challenging time in my personal life. The commute up to London was taking my whole salary because obviously at that point it was extortion in comparison to what I was earning. I was like, I don't know if this is me. And there was something in me that was a salesperson. And my mum said to me, I think you need to be selling something. And I was like, well, okay, what? And then obviously I have a love for cars. And I really enjoyed sort of property related stuff. And I was like, okay, cars, houses, where do I go? So I randomly phoned Romans, spoke to their HR department. They were like, oh, you've got a degree. When can you come in to have an interview? Went in for an interview. They offered me the job there and then.
Wow. But why Romans? Why did you contact Romans of all agents in the first place?
They were just by far the biggest agency in my area.
So you knew them for years?
Yeah. Growing up with them. And my mum was very good friends with an estate agent in Wokingham, where I'm from. And he worked for a very successful independent. And he actually told me to go and work for Romans for their training and then come back to him in a couple of years when I'd done the training.
That's not uncommon, is it? Go and get your training at a corporate and then come back to corporate and then come back to an independent. Is something we hear often in recruitment.
But I never left because I loved it.
No.
So.
Yeah, but isn't it sad that you often hear that people get into a estate agency almost accidentally? They don't go through uni thinking, I want to qualify, get a degree, and then become an agent.
No, I thought I was going to go work in Hollywood.
Yeah, it's a secondary thing. What if this was an industry, Russ, a sector, where people actually had absolute ambition from a young age to want to be an agent? Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
And that's where I think the qualification argument comes in. Because I
licensing.
firmly believe. So at Romans, back in those days, we actually had to sit our NVQ level 3. And we had to do that in our first 2 years. So you had to pass level 3. So we did level 2 and then 3. You could do 4 if you wanted to as well. But that stood me in good stead because then I, as soon as I could, got my NEA qualification as well.
And sorry, the NVQ, did that stop you doing anything at Romans? So in other words, you couldn't do a viewing on your own without an NVQ, you couldn't answer the phone without an NVQ?
No, you still did your job, but
Yeah.
they pulled in an external trainer that sat with the newbies, and it was part of the Romans onboarding.
It was mandatory.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Back then,
Yeah.
it fizzled, and when Romans got bigger and bigger, they started doing their own. I think it was a week or either 2 weeks onboarding training
Induction
themselves.
program.
Yeah. Whereas I didn't have that. I was straight into branch.
So straight into branch, negotiator, into sales.
Yep.
Yeah. So how was those first years for you?
Interesting. I mean, lads environment, obviously, but I loved it. I was in the biggest office, so Reading, which is where Peter Coles was based at the time as well. And I loved it. I just instantly fell in love with doing the role. I was, I think, very lucky working and being able to have daily conversations with the likes of Peter Coles back then, because you just got a different, I think, maybe training to what you do now. And
How many people would have been in that office, Amy?
We had probably, in the height of the market, around 50 people in that office.
50,
We had
wow.
HR upstairs as well.
And how big was
before
Romans?
Got a HQ.
And how big was Romans at that time? Obviously much smaller than they are now.
I probably joined when we were about 11, 12 branches.
So this was Romans only, not this
Yes.
before the Romans leaders
Leaders.
merged.
Yeah. I left 12, 18 months after they sold.
Right. Big change,
Yeah, you could feel the changes, and that's one of the reasons I left.
but good
Absolutely.
overall or not?
You could just feel it changing
Or
To more
diplomatic.
to more corporate
Okay,
ways.
so where did you get to? So you became branch manager.
Yes, I was branch manager for 6 years at Romans, so for half my time. Up at Tilehurst office, which is
And the
west
first
of Reading.
female branch manager.
I was the first female branch manager at
In the
Romans.
whole of the company.
In the whole of the company.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how was that for you? So what were the challenges you faced?
I remember Peter Coles bought me Paul Smith stripy socks, and then we also used to get Cartier pens.
Wow.
They don't do that anymore,
No.
I don't think. It was amazing, and I think one of the things I was really blessed with at Romans is my manager at Reading, a guy called John Roberts, who I think is still in the industry.
Yes, yeah.
He kind of made a point. He was like, "Where do you want to go?" And I was like, "The top.
The very top.
I want to be a manager."
Mm-hmm.
And that was really early on. And he was like, "Right, well, I'm going to make you branch manager, and let's see if we can make you the first female branch manager."
And what year was that you were made manager?
So that would have been 2010-ish.
Can I ask you a question that might not be popular amongst the Romans fraternity, but why did it take them so long to promote their
I think
first
you just
female
took
manager?
the words out of my mouth.
Sorry, but great minds.
Yeah.
Hang on, no, because I was 10 Yeah, it
Probably
would have
better
been
that I
about
asked
that.
it than you.
Yeah, it would have been about that
But why?
ish. Do you know what? I didn't rush into valuing.
No, but not you. Why did it take them so long?
Why did it
to
take them
promote
so long?
a woman into a branch manager role? That's only 14 years ago. It's not like it's the 60s.
There were many lettings managers.
Okay.
So at Romans, bear in mind, you used to have sort of like a sales branch manager and a lettings branch manager.
Yeah.
And I think the same story as it is now. There's a lot more senior women in the letting side of the business, wrongly or rightly. I know personally of friends that were pushed into lettings over sales.
What, because there were women?
Not Romans.
Because they were
but
women?
Because they were women.
Wow. Why do you think that was? Sorry, because you think that the company thinks they're better suited to lettings. Why would that be?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, because actually it's fundamentally exactly the same. You're still matching people up with property.
Pressure, busy.
Maybe, but there's still a lot of pressure in this.
No, I mean both. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Both,
even
I
more
think,
so.
I think if you took a poll of the split between male female, it would be a massive bias. Female lettings managers,
Really?
letting sales, from my experience.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you got more
and
than
I've
most.
no reason why.
Yeah, yeah.
I have no reason why.
Well, maybe because some of these companies are pushing women that way, but that just seems.
I'm
mystified as to why
now,
that would be.
But yeah, it definitely felt like that. And if you look at sort of property managers, lettings, like admin, renewals,
Yeah.
staff, that kind of thing, they do tend to be women.
So what? So you get made manager. Which branch?
Tilehurst.
Okay. What challenges did you have in your first weeks and months as the first female manager? Did it strike you that you were different to everybody else in that management role on the basis that the men that were branch managers kind of looking at you as a woman because you're a woman and expecting something different? I mean, how did that manifest itself? Or was there not a flicker?
It was the biggest challenge I actually found was going from being one of the team to the team leader.
Right.
Okay.
Because I was one of the lads. I said to you before this, we spent our lives talking about women, football and cars.
Yeah. So you had to grow up a little bit. You had to become a bit more sensible.
You do have to grow up, and also you have to become very unselfish, because you go from being usually a lister or maybe an assistant manager where you're wanting to do all the valuations, you're grabbing the good ones. You know, Romans, it was warfare. Every morning, who did what val, and everyone had done their research on which ones were the good ones to go for. So going from that, being part of the team to the team leader, I think is really hard, and definitely even now, amazing listers can make terrible managers, and the other way around.
Yeah.
Because some people are actually...
Often good listers should just stay as listers, right?
Yeah.
Because just because you're a good lister doesn't mean you're a good manager. Exactly, I agree, totally.
But then is there a ceiling for them? Are they going to get bored? And I know certainly people that are in that situation. But I think that's the biggest challenge, and you become, you have to become maybe slightly more reserved as well. Back in the day when we were all going down the pub every Friday at 5 o'clock after work or whatever, you have to become a little bit more sensible.
Yeah, leave early.
Yeah.
Don't
go to the strip club.
And what drove to leave Romans then? That was the buyout, was it?
It just started to change. Romans was getting bigger and bigger. I needed a new challenge. I moved over to... I got asked to go and actually manage the Warfield office. And because Tilehurst was really successful, that I'd kind of done my thing. I was getting a bit restless. Been there for 6 years. And then they asked me to go and take over Warfield and see if I could sort of work a bit of magic there. And it didn't sit. It was a very different market. And I didn't gel, I don't think, as much over there as I had done in the Reading region.
Right. With what? The area or the team or what?
Bit of everything.
Everything?
Yeah.
Okay. So how long did you last there before? And presumably that was your last role at Romans, was it?
That was about 6 months.
Right, okay.
But then I got offered an opportunity.
Yeah.
With Davis Tate, and David was a friend of, or knew of, my godmother's husband, in a long story short.
And what was that role?
There's always connections.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the Twyford office came up, and the managerial position came up, and that's where that happened. And that was an amazing opportunity, because I went to work in Twyford, which is a village in Berkshire, but I covered Sonning-on-Thames, Wargrave on Thames, some beautiful villages like Waltham, St Lawrence, in that area, and Twyford. So it elevated my career, because I'd gone from just bread and butter
to high end.
To suddenly I was valuing £3 million houses, and putting on my hands.
So it was a proper step up.
Yeah. So it was great for me, because it was a different experience. It was a different company. It was a much smaller company. So it was, much similar to the size of when I started Romans.
So back to recognition, visibility, seeing the boss every day.
Yeah.
All the stuff that you'd liked, and that's what appealed to you at Romans.
And also, again, pulling a branch up, building a team, and making that office successful.
Yeah.
Within the village.
Do you think companies, when they get bigger, like Romans Leaders and many others countrywide, whoever, do you think they inevitably lose that culture that they were formed on?
I think it's very hard to keep it. Really hard.
Therefore, they lose good people, because those people like you started in that business because of that foundational stuff.
And now they're leaving to go work for self-employed models.
Yeah.
Because they're going to go do it themselves. Culture's really, really hard. I think in any business, I'm in the supplier world now, and we've worked really hard since launching Smart Compliance, the culture, because we've got a big contact centre which has got 50 people in it. Yeah. As well as remote workers like myself and all my team. I've got them all up and down the country. So creating that culture that actually across the whole company, across the senior management team, the remote workers and the contact centre has been really high priority and important to us.
Yeah. And why did you end up at Smart?
So after 3 years with obviously one prop tech company, left there, took a long break, which was nice because we had a heat wave at the same time.
Right.
So that was good timing. Went to work for another company that didn't quite sit right for a few months. And then again, an opportunity came up, and it was kind of full circle for me because Rob Sendall, who is our founder and CEO, set up Live back in 1997 with
I
remember going
guidance. Yeah, I did. That was
Camberley.
Yeah, they're still
what an
there.
awesome business.
So it's now
was
Lifetime.
a fantastic
Well, he
business.
sold Live, and it's now he then set up Lifetime Legal, who we're powered by.
Yeah.
And so it kind of felt like for me, I was going back full circle because obviously Rob knows Dale, worked with Dale really well.
So you knew them through the industry anyway.
Yeah. So, and obviously when I was at Romans, we used Live conveyancing.
Yeah.
When I joined. So,
We're going to give you a chance at the end to plug Smart, so that's the dowry we give for coming
no
on.
one needs to plug it.
I want to delve a little bit into the challenges you faced on your journey, because we've got to know each other through the last 2-3 years at various events, and I've learned a little bit about your backstory. But you've had to overcome several hurdles in your time, and that's from a mental health perspective, which you've talked about, and that pressure on you on valuation. So let's just expand that a little bit, and how companies did or didn't support you.
Yeah, this is really interesting. So the first Women in Agency conference last year, I was on stage talking about my struggle and how I have my sort of coping techniques, if you like, on anxiety. And what was really interesting is I started getting panic attacks on valuations or before valuations. And I asked people to stand up in the room if they'd get the sweaty palms, start feeling sick, start getting a bit shaky, a bit panicky, short of breath, whatever, feeling not quite right. And the whole room stood up. I was like, right, that's how normal this is.
And how did that make you feel? Validated? That it wasn't just you?
I think I was a bit few. Thank God everyone stood up because I had a feeling they would. And I think it's just so common. And it's not just women. I've had so many men reach out to me and say, well, one in particular phoned me to thank me because one of the techniques worked for him on evaluation, and then he won the instruction. So when you get that kind of feedback, that's insane. That support, that help. And for me, that epitomises actually what the Women in Estate Agency conference is all about anyway.
And can you impart, maybe briefly, one part of that coping mechanism? So to those watching this now that this registers with, they think, my God, that's me. I've had that.
Yeah, I get those sweaty palms.
What can you say now that would help them through that experience?
I think the one that always helped me was get outside. So we were taught at Romans to do 2 tours. So the first one, get the owner to show them around, and then you want to go and do another one on your own, and pretend you're measuring up. Not pretend, but measure up and take notes, because that gives you the thinking time. Because yes, you've always got an idea of the value when you go out to a property, and if you don't know, you shouldn't be valuing that property in the first place. But you need to rethink that and think about the marketing strategy that you want to propose, etc., etc. So what I would do is sit down, and then my routine was then I'd start to panic. So I'd start talking to them to do my fact find about them, and I would start panicking, and I'd be like, just actually want to take a couple of minutes out.
And do you think that was visible? Do you think the seller sensed
probably
it?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
But
which makes you panic even more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I would say, look, do you mind if I just take a couple of minutes? I just want to walk around the garden and think about the marketing strategy I'd like to propose for this property and to you.
Nice tactic.
Yeah.
Get outside.
Yeah.
Get outside. There is nothing better for anxiety than fresh air.
Yeah. Walk to the end of the garden, look at the roof.
Yeah, and then when you're outside, focus on your breathing. A lot of people use the 10 breaths, so in on 1, out on 2. I actually do it the other way around, so I do in on 10, out on 9, and count down, because I'm in my head, when I get to 0, I'm going to be calm. So I'm counting down to the calmness. But the biggest one is so you need to distract your brain. When you're having a panic attack, you have to distract your brain. So what can you see? I can see the nice clouds, blue sky. What can you smell? I can smell the fresh cut grass, or I can smell whatever. It's just rained.
In a KPI chasing world that our industry is often accused of being, did you talk to your company about this?
No.
You didn't dare talk to them?
Absolutely not. Colleagues, yes. And actually, it heightened when I was at Davis Tate, and I had amazing colleagues, and we spoke about it a lot in the branch, which was great.
And can people reach out to you now, watching this directly? So would you
Of course.
invite that
Yeah,
in terms of
absolutely,
helping them as
100%.
individuals?
Yeah, 100%. I think we've got lots. We're very lucky. We've got things like Agents Together now, but yeah, and there's
Now we've
lots of support.
got a bit personal. Can we get a bit more personal?
How personal?
Sexuality.
Yeah, why not?
This podcast shouldn't be about that, but I don't think we can talk about Amy Shields without talking about that element of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Not just that you're gay, but I'm quite fascinated by the whole coming out process and what
Do you
that
need to
is
tell us
like.
something, Russell?
Yeah, I was
Do you need
just
to
gonna
declare
say.
something?
No. Because I'm not. I'm afraid there's no revelation here. I can't get my head round how on earth to family, work, friends, you say I'm gay, and someone could clip this, couldn't they? And actually, I'll just come out. No, but how you
Well, Chris is on the
how you
details,
countenance that, given that some people react in a bad way, and I think you've got a story about that. Do you mind sharing it? If it's too sensitive, tell me to piss off.
No,
and
it's
I think
fine.
this would be 20 years ago.
Yeah, so I came out when I was 21.
Because I think the world is a different place now, maybe,
Yes.
but not completely. But 20 years ago,
20 years ago, it was still very hard. And I would say that even now, even with everything being a lot more accepting, being a gay person or a trans person coming out will 100% be the scariest thing ever that you do in your whole life. It just fundamentally, that's never going to change, because I was brought up in a very traditional town. I didn't know one gay person when I came out. Not one. So that's really hard. And I think I spent my whole teenage years trying to be normal. So I had boyfriends, forcing myself. Yeah, hated all of it.
Well, because you thought it was some kind of phase that you were going through.
I didn't even know. I just thought.
But you knew.
I knew I wasn't normal. I knew I didn't like it. And didn't like it. But I didn't know that actually I was gay until I kissed a girl. And then suddenly.
How old were you?
21.
right?
21 is when you knew.
Yeah.
And you came out at 21.
It just suddenly made sense. Like,
Wow.
it was like,
Right.
oh, can I swear?
Yes.
Oh, shit. That's, oh, God.
So the penny dropped.
Because I'd not had anything gay in my life. I had no gay influences. So suddenly I just felt like normal. I was like, oh.
So it's a
That's
relief.
it.
It's a relief to know.
Almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was working in Soho. So that was
That
good
helped.
fun after work.
Yeah.
I made friends in London and that was great. We didn't have any of the internet dating sites back then. We actually used to go and socialise.
Go meet people.
I mean, it was incredible.
Yeah.
What,
So
speak to each other in bars and clubs?
Yeah.
No.
Yes,
I know, right?
Yeah.
We used to have some fabulous lesbian bars in Soho that have now there's one left. One. And there were probably, when I came out, probably about 10 that were purely women-only bars. And then, I had to come out to parents.
Did you come out to them first?
No. Absolutely. I hid it from them as long as I could.
Why?
Terrified.
You didn't think that they'd react well?
Absolutely terrified.
You didn't think they'd react well?
My mum had made a few comments. Things like, oh, you're not going to that dirty gay bar again tonight. Because I'd started hanging out with some people that obviously... Yeah, so I suppose maybe in my subconscious I was trying to hint.
Right.
And for them just to work it out and me not have to actually say...
So you wanted them to
I'm
come
gay.
to you and say you're gay, aren't
Almost.
you?
Yeah.
And your mum and dad
exactly.
together?
Which is what my boss did at Romans.
Right.
We were out on a night out, both, a bit tipsy, stood at the bar, and he was like, it's okay to be gay. And I was like, yeah, that's cool, no worries. He was like, we talk about it, we don't have to, whatever.
Yeah.
And that was it, done.
But back to your mum and dad, they're together?
No, divorced.
Oh, they're divorced. So you had to tell them separately?
Yeah.
So you had to do it twice?
I know, even more scary,
oh my
right?
God.
I
So
know.
what happened? So which was the hardest, your mum or your dad?
My mum.
Your mum.
Yeah.
Because did she react in the way that you feared she would?
Yeah,
And what did that look like?
me moving out of home,
What, straight away?
pretty much,
Big
Right.
row?
within a week.
Big ding dong? So she
No.
didn't accept it?
I'm one of these people, I find arguments really hard, which is actually probably why was scared of coming on this podcast.
After watching Charles.
Yeah, especially.
Yeah.
I'm not one for confrontation. And I just shriveled up, and my stepdad helped me. I was really lucky, so I had some really good friends to do work. I actually went to go and live with one of the guys that I work with. who's one of the valuers at the time at the Reading office, moved into his flat because he had a spare room, and ended up living there for 3 years, I think it was.
And did you not speak to your mum for a long period of time?
About 2 years.
Didn't speak to her at all?
Rarely. Like, literally, are you okay? Yes,
So
no.
she kind of ostracised you because you were gay? Sorry, this is uncomfortable, tell me to shut up, but...
No, it's fine. It's hard. She made it very clear that I was her daughter and she still loved me, but she needed time
to process
it, because I think we went through the blame game. So I went to an all-girls school.
Right.
That was the first blame.
Yeah.
Then it was my dad, because he had affairs when I was a kid, so I had zero trust in men. So we went through the blame game.
Was this about her trying to mitigate her own guilt?
Maybe. I think it's hard, right? If I'd been obviously gay from a small age, which actually, when I look back, I think I was. I played football. I preferred playing with my brother's cars and toys. I didn't want to wear girly clothes. I thought it was, but I think back then as parents, there's that tradition, isn't there? That idealism that.
What generation is your
daughter.
mum?
She's 72.
Okay, so she's from that generation where it was... I mean, don't forget, homosexuality was illegal until 1967.
Yeah.
So she comes from that generation, so she must have been born in the 1940s,
She was 51.
late 40s?
1951.
1951, yeah. So when she was 15 or 16,
it was
illegal. So I'm not making an excuse for her not accepting, but she comes from that generation.
Yeah, and all the press and I suppose the politics and the publicity that went with it back then. Yeah. It was seen as illegal. It really was. It was. You were
underground. How was your stepdad? Your stepdad was okay with it?
He's fine.
Right. Straight away?
Yeah, instantly.
What about your dad?
Dad was fine. He was like, "Oh, if that's you, that's fine. Whatever."
And things now with your mum?
Absolutely. My mum now, ironically, is like my best mate.
Really?
Good.
So she's gone full circle.
What turned
And we've
her?
gone full circle.
What happened?
I think we just talked, and she realised that I was still Amy, and it's okay. And I think the hardest conversation after that was that I didn't want children.
But that equally would have applied potentially if you were straight. Right?
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
And how accepting is she of your partner?
She's always been really accepting, actually. She is genuinely one of the most kindest people that I know. And she's always been very loving, very kind, very welcoming. I've had girlfriends over for Christmas, all that kind of stuff, birthdays, family celebrations. So it's absolutely fine now.
That's wonderful to hear, and great that it's all back to how it should be. I'm keen for our audience, and I've been inspired by the Women in Estate Agency Conference, and it's made me reflect several times on my history and what we got right and what we got badly wrong when I was a leader around a board or board of directors. Hearing people's struggles of all levels at the Women in Estate Agency Conference, hopefully is helping the men who are leading businesses there and the women to change policies, change perception, change opportunities. How do you see the business world responding to the stresses that you faced, so the anxiety, but also their LGBT policies and making sure that they're giving opportunities to everybody?
I think it's just the support. So I think the Women in Estate Agency Conference, I think obviously being on the committee is an absolute privilege, and what a group of women to be on a committee with. I feel so lucky and honoured to be on that committee. It's unbelievable. And I think Verona summed up perfectly what we're trying to achieve, and that's that we actually don't want a women in estate agency.
There shouldn't be
There shouldn't be the need for it. We want to eventually get to the point where it's not needed. With regards to issues, with regards to sexuality, anxiety, general support, I think there's a lot of companies that get it very right. I know a lot of companies actually more in the supplier world that do offer free therapy once a month to their staff. I think when you look at culture-based, Heather staff at the conference this year, they've nailed culture beyond
Fantastic
belief.
talk about culture.
That was very impressive.
The poo in the pool.
Yeah, the poo in the pool.
Yeah.
Never going to forget that.
No.
But, Heather's got a huge percentage of gay workforce. So they're, they celebrate it up there. And I think in agency, again, is it quite similar to sort of football in that, you know, there's lots of men, it's a bit of a laddie culture sometimes in offices. Now, I thrived on that because I genuinely was one of the lads, and I often get on with guys better than I do girls as well. But I think making it aware and having some kind of support, no matter how big your company
Not just
is.
changing your logo to a rainbow once a year.
No, don't do that unless you're actually doing something for the gay community, because that really grinds my gears.
What the temporary virtual signalling?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, never change your logo unless you're actually doing something for that
So many
cause.
corporates do it though, don't they? Whether it's, you know, Black History Month or it's something related to LGBTQ, it's the marketing department saying, "Oh, I think we
Put a
should
stamp on there."
I think we should do that for a few days and then forget about it." But there's no meaningful culture that actually shouts those causes.
No, unless you're raising some money for Stonewall or, you know, I mean, there's so many amazing companies and estate agents that do some incredible charity and community work. But others will just change their logo because they think it's the cool thing to do on LinkedIn.
Bit contrived, isn't it?
Which is really sad. But go back to support. I think every company, they should have some kind of support for people. It should be in their employment policy. And perks. You know, for me personally, I would prefer to have a free hour of therapy every month than, I don't know, 50 quid bonus on conveyancing leads
or a bottle of wine at Christmas or something.
It's interesting because the next guest on our podcast is the operations director of a large independent agent. So 17 offices, lots of different parts of that business as well. So it'd be interesting to hear how they've approached and changed their policies to support all members of staff.
And I think especially, I think what's really important and something I am going to rate Ben Madden on massively is what he's just started with his boys club, because the highest reason of death in the male, you know, gender is suicide.
Under 40.
And I think estate agents especially, and people in the property world, especially after COVID, I've never seen my friends in the industry so stressed, so burnt out. So it was horrific. And I think in our industry, sometimes you just get home from work and men just generally bottle everything up. They don't have a release. And it's really sad.
One of the reasons we started with the Make Mondays Matter slogan is not just about it's just not about me jumping around going, hey, Make Mondays Matter. It's because 62% of people dread going to work on a Monday. The largest percentage there are men. That then leads to drinking, gambling, violence, depression, anxiety, and there's no need because there are opportunities. Definitely, if you want to stay in the property world, there are lots of opportunities to make your Mondays matter. So on that respect, what do you do, Amy, to make your Mondays matter? How do you set yourself up for
Do you know what? Who make my Mondays matter? It's my team. I adore the people I work with, and I've learnt a lot over hiring and recruiting on culture since leaving agency, actually, because in agency I think I was younger, I was a bit more naive. You want to fill that seat quickly, right? Your phone's ringing, you got to fill that seat. Now I take my time with it, and all of my recruitment bar one so far at Smart Compliance has been opportunistic.
Okay.
So conversations that have just led to then recruiting.
Okay.
And they have to be the right fit. Our sales team calls are uplifting and fun, and we're all remote working. The sales team is completely remote.
Right.
So they're sat in their home offices.
But that's interesting, and that speaks to culture, and it does show that you can have culture even though you're remote. Look, guys, we're going to have to wrap this up because I know we can talk for another 20, 30 minutes, but we've got another guest to get in, and we're trying to be disciplined about our 30 minutes. Amy, can I thank you? This has been, I know for you, a rather personal thing, maybe a little bit more personal than you anticipated. But I think the fact that you've recounted your journey, your challenges, both in terms of sexuality and mental health, I think will be very well received by others that perhaps need that advice.
So many others.
Yeah, definitely. So, Amy, thank you. Hopefully it hasn't been too traumatic.
Not
You got
at
off a
all.
lot more lightly than Charlie Lambdin did. So that's the end of this episode. Until the next one. So, guys, that's it. Goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Until the next one.